Hey everybody, welcome to Before College TV Live. I'm Harlan Cohen, and today I am here with Pete and Meghan. I just call them Pete and Meghan because we're such good friends, and we go so far back. I think we've got a good 10 minutes under our belt, right? Right? Isn't that true? Maybe
10,
maybe
10,
11.
15.
Plenty of time.
Yeah.
Plenty of time.
Right, but you can see sometimes things just naturally connect. And Meghan is an Olympian and world champion rower. In addition, she is also a Division I athlete, two sports. Isn't that correct, Meghan?
Yes. Yeah, I played both volleyball and softball at the.
Why not just one? Like, why two?
I was a multi-sport athlete growing up. I couldn't make a decision.
Right, because to do volleyball and to be recruited for both, is that true?
Yeah, and I was actually recruited for basketball as well. So I was recruited for 3 Division I sports.
So you're really sought after. Really, I've never known what that's like to be so sought after as like a teenager. Like, no one wanted me. Maybe a few people, but to be wanted is a wonderful thing. And Pete is a Olympic gold medalist and world rowing champion. And it's unbelievable to see. If you have a chance, you can see Pete at the helm. I don't know if your position, you're a coxswain. Could you explain to individuals what your job is and how you make this thing work?
Yeah, sure. So job number one.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so the coxswain's job in rowing, first of all, so like I'm 5 feet tall. My athletes are like 6'5" and 220 pounds. I've got 8 people sitting in front of me. And job number one is simply to make that boat go straight down the race course. So, it's like a bucking bronco. And the rudder on the boat is like the size of a postage stamp. So that's actually kind of hard. But then I also, I communicate to the crew the actual race plan as we're going along. So, over the course of the season or whatever it is, you have to build up a lot of trust with those athletes so that when you say, like, if you go now, we can win a gold medal. They do. But basically they're listening to me. I have one of those like little like TED Talk mics that I wear. And so over the course of the race, and I'm the only person facing forward. I'm the only person who can see where we're going. They kind of have to trust me to tell them what's going on and like what's coming next.
Explain to me, let's say Meghan is rowing, and I know Meghan, you have a different, you row a different race, right? You're in a different area, but let's just say, for the sake of being a fly on the wall, if Meghan is one of your rowers, explain to me what your plan would be. Like, how do you communicate a plan?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of rehearsal and practice. So a race takes between, say, 5.5 and 6.5 minutes. And there's no way that a human physically can go all out for 5.5 or 6.5 minutes. So a lot of what I'm doing is saying, okay, this is the pace that we want to be at right now. So we're going to, you may be pulling as hard as you possibly can, but we're going to only do that a certain number of times per minute. And at the beginning, you go buck wild. And at the end, you go buck wild. And in the middle, you kind of have to go as fast as you can while conserving some energy. And so, a lot of what I would be saying is probably not, not suitable for, family-oriented video such as this. But you
use a wide range of words to drive.
I pride myself on my vocabulary. Yeah.
So that's one of the things. Is that just like, are you someone who has a particularly loose mouth when it comes to this, or is that just the style of most coxswains?
I think it varies. I was probably very much the opposite in that I didn't say too much. What I tried to do, though, was just make everything that I said to be very like concise, and this is what we need to do. Get ready now.
Right.
And then leave out the other stuff until it was really important.
So when you win, do you say it was the entire crew? Like, it's the crew that won. Are you that type of leader, or do you say I won?
Oh, no, of course. I mean, it's always the team. I mean, that's bear in mind.
Ever.
No, but okay. Look at it this way: as a coxswain, right? If you put me in the boat by myself, the boat would just flip over. Okay, so it's it's the athletes that sort of make it go. And hey, I was part of the team, but it's one of the great things about rowing as a sport is that you have to be synchronized, not just physically. And like in Meghan's event, they each have two oars, which makes it harder to be, sort of synchronized. And in the event that I was in, everybody only has one.
Right.
And we were kind of like the knuckle draggers. But not just physically synchronized, but also just like so mentally and emotionally on the same page. So very much a team.
I would think that you set the tone. I mean, the real question, or the undercurrent there, was what you do is so integral to the success. And I know that you've had a couple other crews where you came up short in terms of your goal, your Olympic goal, and didn't get where you wanted to go. Is that correct?
I mean, that was, and that, my first Olympics, we were heavily favored to win, and we came in fifth. And it was the accumulation of a lot of little self-inflicted mistakes. And so, from that, I mean, I think you learn to really respect the process, and that you try to control everything that's within your control, which means the lesson of that is understand what's not in your control and let that go.
Mm-hmm. Was the pain of that, and I know, Meghan, you've been on all sides, and I have so much that I want to talk to you about, and I like watching you watch the answers, because I could tell that when you're listening, you're not just listening, you're really listening. Are these questions interesting to hear the answers to, as someone who's rowing?
Yeah, and I think, for context, Pete was also the last gold medal Olympic boat for the U.S., and so he's a little bit of a legend, especially on the men's rowing side and as a coxswain. And so, while we've known each other for a long time and we're friends and we have overlap, it's always great to obviously hear that personal experience. So that's why you see a lot of nodding, and I can empathize in a lot of ways, but it's also just so interesting too.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that for both of you, just how much I respect you and what you've done and what you continue to do and what you represent and how hard you worked and continue to work. I find it fascinating. I find the parts where you talk about just the pain of losing, that part of winning and losing. It seems like winning is important to you. Getting that gold was important to you, and not getting it was really painful.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some of the reasons that I just mentioned, like the worst failures that you experience are the ones where you probably could have gone back and changed a few things, and that wouldn't have happened. There's if you go out and have your absolute best performance and you don't win, you eventually come to grips with that, right? You say, okay, look, with the benefit of a little bit of time, you realize, I don't think there's anything we could have done to go faster. So that's our goal. It's really disappointing when you look back and say okay, stupid decisions 1 through 15 led to, a complete meltdown. Those are a little bit harder to, harder to handle. They don't get better over time. That's for sure.
Do you think that you have to come up short in order to have the insight and knowledge and grit to be able to win?
It certainly makes it a lot more meaningful. But I do think that one of the things that we learn as athletes is that failure is an integral step on the way to success, because you're always trying to push your limits, right? You're always trying to be better than you've ever been. And you can't just be like, oh, okay, today I'm just gonna be better than I've ever been, right? So that means you go out and try and you don't succeed. So yeah.
And then, Meghan, so you've had a really interesting path to become an Olympian, and you started off in sports that you ended up ultimately not competing in the Olympics. And so walk me through that. In high school, you were a star athlete. That would be my assumption, because you were recruited to play Division I, correct?
I was a pretty good athlete.
Yeah. So were you on top of the world always, or was there an illusion that you were on top of the world? How did that feel to be so accomplished and sought after?
I mean, it certainly was never enough for me. I wouldn't say that I was, I was certainly sought after, but there was always somewhere to go. and always a place to, improve or get better. And I think there's always been a drive, and athletics, I think, really can cultivate that for people, to learn how to, to listen to that drive and to harness it in other areas. And I've seen that, as even though I'm still a professional athlete, but I've been able to apply that to other areas, in terms of just like professionally. But that drive, even though like I saw a lot of success, to me, when I look back, I could have been better. I could have, I could have accomplished more in other areas.
So let's go back to eighth grade Meghan, eighth grade Pete. I don't know if you want to go back there. It's a rough for me. They tore my middle school down, and I didn't do it, but I would have been there with a hammer. So Meghan, when you go back to that place, were you aspiring to play sports professionally? Were you dreaming? What was the thoughts? What were the thoughts then?
Yeah, so I'm in a really interesting generation in which there was just that beginning of like real professional sports for women. And so it was sort of an idea. The 99ers that was eighth grade for me. And when I say the 99ers, the U.S. women's national team of Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, Brandi Chastain, I could list the full roster. And that was a pivotal moment. On VHS tapes, the students that are watching this will have no idea what that is. I used to record every single women's sports content. And it wasn't a lot at the time, that was aired on, ABC, ESPN.
That was the soccer team for those. I don't know if you said soccer. Did you say?
Yeah, well, I said the U.S. women's national team, soccer, World Cup.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, big famous game in the Rose Bowl. And so for me, there was a budding, I think, aspiration that was a possibility, but it still felt very far away, reserved for a small few, because the opportunities weren't as plentiful as they obviously still are, for men's sports. And so I definitely aspired to do something great, but that felt like it ended in college. I wanted to go play for UConn or Tennessee. Like, I was a big basketball fan and player.
Right.
But that felt like the pinnacle. The WNBA was just starting. And I had a poster of Cynthia Cooper, look up Cynthia Cooper, everybody, on my wall. And so it was sort of new. And so I'd say, like, I'm just it makes me so happy to, kids, young women can now grow up, and that's a reality. That is actually an option.
Yeah. Did you ever get to talk to any of these heroes? Did you interact with them in any way or have access to them?
Not at that age. One, I did get to interact. I remember I went to a softball clinic with Lisa Fernandez, and she's a multi-time Olympian softball pitcher for Team USA. But, as it's interestingly enough, as I got older, I worked for ESPN for 5 years, and I got to meet some of my heroes, and just, some of the, even as peers, like in high school, Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird they were everything. And they're like a year or two older than I am. And I remember sitting on a panel as I'm working for ESPN, and they're speaking to us. I'm like, man, these were my heroes. And they're only a year older. So I eventually got to meet as I got older.
Right.
But yeah.
But as a child, and going through that process, I think that's that piece of, because of technology, because of the internet, because of accessibility, you didn't have that in 99, but if there's somebody watching, somebody listening who aspires to follow the path that you've gone down, can people reach out to you? Do you respond to them? Are you accessible? Do you not talk to your public?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the joy of, how social media can be good, right? Is that I do get Instagram messages and of young rowers that just want to ask me a training question, and I absolutely answer every single one that I see.
Do you really?
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I don't get a ton. I'm not, I'm not Sue Bird, I'm not Diana Taurasi, I'm not Megan Rapinoe, right? But for the ones, rowing is small, but for the ones that do reach out, I think it's, one, it gives some, you're seeing that person on the other end, and it gives them, some validation of like, the questions I asked are important, and there's someone who's, just like you said, lived my experience, and now they're sharing that with me.
Right. I think that's so cool that you'll respond and that you're accessible, because I tell students this, that if you dream of something, find the people who are living it, who've gone down that path. And I know that you played basketball. You also played softball for the University of Virginia. That's correct. I got
Correct.
that. Then you also played volleyball, and it wasn't until later that you discovered your love and that your spirit was on the water, and that was a place that you were really meant to be. Pete, going back to you, to eighth grade, Pete, what was your dream? What were you aspiring to do, if anything? Because I know you were talking before a little bit about your path being an unusual one.
In eighth grade, I was definitely more of an academic. To put it politely, like I probably was not the most fit young eighth grader. I was a little bit pudgy. But I knew, like, I was very competitive, and I had just gotten involved in rowing as a coxswain, and was really starting to enjoy it. And then, as a result of that, I got into really good shape, and I played a couple of different sports in high school. But I grew up in Philadelphia, which is a big rowing city. And so as a kid, I was surrounded by these people who had been like Olympic legends,
Really?
Like before I was born. And so, yeah, I think that was really motivating to me. Like that, I think you aspire to the heroes around you. And, as a result of that, like that was what drove me a lot. But even, I got really into rowing, and, my father, who actually was also a coxswain, said, "Hey, like before you really go too deep on this, like try some other things and make sure this is what you want to do," which I actually thought turned out to be really fantastic advice, because I did, I wrestled and was actually pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But it was like the team aspect really, hooked me in. And so very quickly after that, I think, first it was kind of like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool to be an Olympian? And at first it was just like, wouldn't it be cool? And then, eventually it becomes like an all-consuming passion. And I think it has to be, like, if you want to reach that level, right?
Was your dad involved with Olympic sports? Was he also professional athlete?
He did it in high school and college, and then at the time, so right after eighth grade, when I went to high school, he was the coach at our rival high school, which made for a really interesting home life during high school. So during rowing season, I think we probably had to like put tape down the middle of that kind of thing. But yeah, so he's always been involved. In my time in the sport, he was always a coach. And he always really focused on coaching younger people, and I think his goal was to instill a love of like hard work and being with your friends, more than being like the aggro win at any costs.
Right. And then I'm so sorry to interrupt you. When it comes to being a coxswain and being a student who is in high school, getting involved with rowing, what does it look like? Are you also rowing? What type of training? What's that whole process like going through that experience?
Sure. So I had to do a lot of running, because coxswains are like jockeys in the sense there's a weight limit, and you want to be right on the weight limit. So I had to lose a bunch of I guess sort of baby rolls, if you will. So a lot of running to do that. And then just because I was, I wanted to learn everything I could learn about the sport, I actually learned how to row myself. And I think that made a big difference in terms of my ability to be a really good coxswain, because I understood what it felt like. But it's also just this incredibly, rhythmic process that's like meditative in a way, even though it like hurts a lot. But it's a full body workout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you did that, and then you went from high school, you went to college, you went to Cal, University of California, Berkeley, and you were telling me that transition was not so smooth. And can you share with us what that was like for you?
Yeah. And so, I was also a recruited athlete, but I was coming from a very small school on the East Coast to a very big school, all the way across the country. Pretty much, by myself. I think there was one other guy from my high school that went there. and trying to integrate into a new community where a lot of my classmates, whatever it was, all 5,000 of them, a lot of them were coming from schools where like 30 people, like a big chunk of their graduating class was there, and they all knew each other. So I was a bit on the outside looking in, and like I'm 5 feet tall, right? So I stick out in a strange way in a crowd of people. And I think that probably mattered more to me than it did to anybody else. But it took me a while to get integrated. And it was also, I had been used to being a really good student. And, there's a lot of temptations in college that, you probably want to be careful about.
Right.
So the first couple of years were tough. And then I took a year off and had a chance to, I actually tried to make the Olympic team, didn't make it. But when I came back, I think I had a level of maturity and focus that really enabled me to get the most out of, going to Berkeley is like an intellectual feast, but you got to show up.
Yeah.
And so getting some time to figure that out was really, really valuable to me.
Right.
And then my last 2 years were amazing.
Were you recruited as a coxswain at Berkeley?
I was.
Oh, that's so. That's like that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. I didn't make enough of a big deal about it.
Don't worry about it.
But it is. But you know what? It's a really that's a really amazing accomplishment. Do they give you a scholarship for that?
No.
You don't get any money for. Okay.
There's a lot more scholarship money in the sport of rowing now than there was when I was doing it.
Right. So then you were there for a couple years, and that was hard. And then at 5 feet tall, now I can tell you, I'm not the tallest man. I'm one of the taller ones in my family, and I'm 5'5.5" on a really good day. And I've never had a height issue because I've always been overweight with big ears. So people always made fun of my ears and my weight. So my wife asked if I ever had a height issue. I told her no one ever had a chance to make fun of it. There's always other things. But as an athlete who is accomplished and doesn't have big ears, so I think your ears don't look so big. You look like you have nice ears.
Thank
nice
you.
ears, right? They're flat to your head, and you are in good shape. Was that a challenge for any of our under 5'3" and under viewers here? Tell me, how does that shape you?
I think I probably made a bigger deal out of it than other people did, or I thought it was a bigger deal. Just be interesting, like be a good person, and ultimately, that's what people look at. And it was also, having my team, right, that I was part of, and they needed somebody who was 5 feet tall to do the job. So it was like, right. Oh wait, actually, this is a benefit. This is something that enables me to do something that I really love. Yeah.
So really embracing it and then using it to your advantage. But then you took that break. I think that break is so interesting because after you then tried to, you tried to become part of the Olympic team, and when you were rejected, and I say rejection, and I'm really I'm like the king of rejection, so I just sling it and say it. I think you might be as well, given
it's an accurate term.
Yeah, you've been able to overcome so much. What made you go back and not just say enough?
I really wanted it. It was when you have a goal that you really get focused on and believe in your heart that's what you want to do. Then rejection is just one step along the path to, whatever you want to call what comes after, acceptance or success. So, and you learn from it, right? I think sometimes in life, you might be trying things and say, okay, I just gave it my very best effort. I don't think I could do any better than that. And this is as good as I can be. Those are very rare. It's oftentimes that when you do, fail or you're rejected, you can look at it and you can take some lessons out of it. It's a common, phrase in sports that we learn more from our defeats than we learn from our victories.
Right.
There's something to that. And that doesn't mean it doesn't sting or it's not embarrassing or anything like that. And you don't want to hide, for a while because you're
right.
ashamed of yourself. That's all perfectly normal stuff. But then I think the real challenge is like, if you want it bad enough, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off and get back in there.
Is there someone, and Meghan, I want to open this up to you as well, and you could chime in any time, when you really felt awful, when it hurt the most, who was that person who helped you to remember and to believe that you could get there?
I mean, specific to athletics or just any?
Yeah, for the athletic.
Yeah. I mean, Pete and my experience might be a little different. So I'm in the double. So I have another human being. So my partner, and we've been in the double together since 2013 was the first year we popped in. And, you know, for so long, we've really had to rely on each other. So we've experienced those lows, but we've really had to also help each other come out of that. And there's something special about a partnership like that. And
who's your partner, so everyone can know?
Her name is Ellen Tomek, 2-time Olympian.
Right.
And so quite often it's her, we rely on each other. I think that, you know, in times of defeat, and Pete can probably speak to this, like, because especially in team sport, it's not just about you when you win, and it's not just about you when you lose. And so I think being able to come together, acknowledge, you know, for Ellen, we've acknowledged like why we failed or why it went wrong, and really like do kind of an analysis, talk about it, and then we can, you know, build off of that to create the momentum to push us forward.
Mm-hmm. And having that partner, I'm sure, would be really helpful. When you're in your role, Pete, it's a different situation because you've got all these people who are relying on you, and you're probably second guessing your decision making or strategy. Is that accurate? And who helps you through that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, I'm the one kid that doesn't look like the others, you know? And so there is, I think it's easier to have outside scrutiny on me because I'm different. But at the same time, like, it's identical to what Meghan said. It's just there's a whole lot more of them, you know, and I think the big lesson that I got out of it was, like, not everybody has to have their very best day for us to have our best day. And sometimes there are going to be people on your team who are just carrying everybody. And your goal is to, you know, you try to be that person as often as you can. But when you're not having like a perfect day, or like when things don't go well, you look to your teammates. You know, they're the ones like that you're going through it all with. I think they're really the only ones who can understand it in the same visceral way that you do. Yeah. And yeah, so it really probably not very different, other than just there were a lot more of them.
Right. So I'm always interested when I talk to students who have been through a challenge. There's always a person. So I think maybe in directing the question, if there was an individual, I know for Meghan, it's Ellen, you know, she's right there. The two of you have each other's back. And, you know, there's going to be a foundation of love and support and empathy and compassion, and you're going to propel each other through that. But even with Pete, with your break that year after year two, was it, you know, a family member? Was it a coach? Was it someone who?
Yeah, it was definitely family members. I mean, it was my parents. Yeah. You know, and at first it was, you know, sort of strongly suggesting you should probably take a year off and really figure out what you want to do. Yeah. But, you know, that over the course of a year, I think that morphed into like, we think you've really learned a lot, and, you know, you should go give this another try. And so I'm, you know, very lucky that, you know, my parents were really, really focused on making sure I got the best education that I could. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, when everything breaks down, you know, ultimately, it was my parents. I mean, now, you know, I'm married and have a family, so it's my wife and daughter, of course. But
right.
But
and then, was it Sydney was it the Sydney Olympics where there was one where you said you were, which Sydney was good?
No, Sydney was bad. Sydney was
that's right. That's the one that haunted you. That kept going through your head. Sydney. Still
does.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Aren't you over it? You don't get over it?
Hey, nothing stings worse than a missed opportunity, right? That's the thing.
Why does that one hurt so badly?
Because it was self-inflicted. It wasn't like, you know, again, I think there's this distinction that is very, very stark in sports, which is you go out, you compete, and if you don't win, then very quickly afterwards you come to one of two conclusions, and that is, you know what, we couldn't have done, like, that was the best we had on that day and we lost. And that you can come to terms with. The one that you can't really come to terms with is, like, that was not our best performance, not even close. And that you never really get over that, because you don't get a lot of opportunities like that. I mean, especially at the Olympics, right? Like, you blow it, you got another 4 years to deal with it, and that's not that much fun to think about.
It's interesting, but then you come back and you get a gold, so you're able to get that. I would think, and I'm clearly not you and not in the sport, that would erase those feelings, because if it wasn't for the experience of not getting it and going through that, ultimately I couldn't have been in this place to be able to win gold.
It makes it a lot sweeter. And like all things, I think you appreciate things more when you understand the absence of them. Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that you continue to compete and think about it and feel it. I mean, it's really in your DNA. It's like that. Those things are just always there.
Yeah, I think to get to that level in sports, you'd find that in all of us, is that it is deeply ingrained in who we are.
It's interesting because I think of, for me, I do a lot of speaking events, and I think of the speaking events that didn't go well, the one where people weren't happy, the one where, and there are, there are very few that happen, but they cut so deep because I care so much, and the pain and the scar, it's always there. So it would be unfair for me to say, aren't you over it and haven't you gone through it? Because I am so beaten and so bruised and so scarred that as you were sharing, I'm like, you know what, Harlan, I'm not over it, dude. How could someone else be on a world stage?
But it's the very same phenomenon, I think, right? That because you care so much, like, you go back, you analyze the things that didn't go well because you want to build on that, right? You want to make sure that, okay, that is something that I don't want to ever do it that way again. Whereas, when it all works out and goes really well, at least for me, that's more for, like, celebrating. Like, there aren't that many lessons necessarily in winning, but you can certainly celebrate the wins.
Right, but the lessons, there aren't as many. And I think that also is a direct connection to the coaching that you do and the business that you're in. And I have one more question for Meghan, and then I want to share what Online Career Fair is and how you are helping others still to be at the front, to direct people, to help them, to connect them, to give them resources, to help them to find the fire and passion to make their dreams come true. So I see the direct connection with that. Meghan, I just want to touch on one piece. I read the blog that you wrote about, I think it was your junior year with the University of Virginia, and you seemingly are a student who should be on top of the world. And I say should be, it's, I don't know what it's like to be so embraced and celebrated and win so frequently, but yet you were looking at some tape and you saw, or you're looking at a replay of your I think it was your volleyball game, right? And you had lost a lot of weight, and you then, that was the moment you realized you needed to get help. Can you just explain, what happened and how you went from being this person who was always winning to someone who didn't have the control that you necessarily wanted and needed?
Yeah, it's a good softball question. So, I think that
one more question.
I think, for me at the time, there were narratives that I was telling myself, but there was also compensation. I was compensating for a lot of deep unhappiness or deep unsettled, kind of an unsettling attitude I had about myself by achieving other things. I was the star athlete. I was the student body president. I was I was a good student. I was a good daughter. Like, I could compensate for that kind of unhappiness with all these other narratives. I threw myself into these other things, which is a coping mechanism I think a lot of people can relate to. And it was sort of that, I remember that visual kind of just like a little bit of a slap in the face of like, oh wow, I've done serious damage to my body, and this is not who I've been telling myself, I am, and getting caught in that narrative. And that's when, for me, people develop eating disorders for a number of reasons, but mine was actually a control thing. I could not control the way I felt, and the uneasiness and sort of really like self-hate I had about my sexuality, that I was controlling it other ways. And that led to a deep-seated, hate and unhappiness. And so that was that pivotal moment of sort of just seeing the result of that and being like, wait, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. And I need help to get past that. And I think for a lot of young people, it comes in different forms of sort of, we can get stuck in the narratives we're telling ourselves or who we think we should be, instead of who we want to be, and embracing that. And it's okay to rely on other people to help you get there as well.
When did the self-hate start?
Oh, I think it was like quite young. I mean, I grew up in the deep South, where in a fairly religious family, and where the messaging to me was that was not okay. That was against, my religious beliefs. That was against the societal beliefs, the norms, the people that I was surrounded around at the time, that this wasn't okay. And so if you're being messaged that this isn't okay,
right.
To be gay or to be different in any way, I think a lot of, different in any way, you can start to message that to yourself. Over time, it can become a voice actually inside of you that's telling yourself that, rather than just absorbing it from the outside.
And then was there a time where you were able to share with people close to you, your secret, your feelings, or how long did it take for you to get to that place?
I mean, I think it wasn't until college, and then I was learning more and more about myself. I also didn't really I didn't understand what was going, kind of where these feelings were coming from, or what that self-hate. Upon reflection, I can categorize it now, and I can articulate like, yeah, that's probably what was going on. But at the time, whether it was because I was also just like, I don't know what's going on. So it really wasn't until college, and also I was exposed to all these other different people where it was actually okay. Or, the messaging was a little bit softer, that like, yeah, you're actually okay. Like being
right.
yourself, and you can find people who accept you for you. And that's really, it wasn't until college, that I found friends and, found that support network that embraced me for who I was, and not being the star athlete, not being the star student, all these other things. Was
there an LGBTQ center? Was there a particular person on the team? Was there someone who made it okay?
There were certainly those resources. For me, it was one of my best friends that I made in college, that she saw me for who I was right away. I thought I was a good pretender. And she was an athlete herself, and Jessie. And she called me out, and I was like, I immediately have a friend.
What year was it, and what did she say to you?
It was actually my first year of college. And I remember I was hiding, like I had a friend back home. It was really kind of like, I didn't even call it my girlfriend at the time, but she called me out on it because she wanted me to know that it was okay.
Yeah.
And so it was, she just like, she's always been one of those people that's like just honest and in your face, yeah. But that's what I needed, because I was like, oh, this is safe. Right.
But then it was 2 years later with the eating disorder. And I know you were saying, you were worried about the calories in an apple. You were really getting to this place of complete control. What was that thing that allowed you to get the help to face that and talk to I think it was your mom you reached out to, and how do you do it? Because that's the piece of that part where, we know we're out of control. We know we're feeling intense pain, but then how do we reach out and get that help? And you did it. How?
I think I was also, I was sort of in a place where I needed help. It was sort of a choice of either you're either going to have the future that you want, or you're not, and it's up to you. And you have to be the agent of that change by asking for help. I also, people were beginning to be supportive, but push me and say, this isn't okay. And so out of love, people were, also signaling to me that, hey, like, I love you and I need you to get past this. And so it was a combination of, sort of coming to that self-realization of, I have to change, and this is the change that needs to happen, and I can't do it by myself. Sort of when, you're at the bottom of the well and you can't get out by yourself.
Right. You had to. And do you love yourself now?
Absolutely. You can always improve.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. How about you? How about you, Pete? Do you love yourself?
Yeah. It took time. I'm a lot older than Meghan is. It probably may have taken me a little bit longer. But yeah, I think you come to understand who you are, and like Meghan was saying, like once you become comfortable in your own skin, like it's a whole different world out there for you, right? And yeah, like, hey, I'm 5 feet tall, I'm bald, all kinds of things that might seem like, oh man, like, doesn't that suck? And like, actually, you know what? Like, I'm an Olympic gold medalist, and like, I have a beautiful family, and like, work with really cool people like Meghan, and we do something that's really awesome. No, like, my life is fantastic. Like, I love it.
Right.
So yeah, but I do think that, that challenge of becoming comfortable with who you are, it's something every young person goes through this, and it ain't easy. Let's just say that, even for the people who seem like they have it all together, right? There's always this, like, there's something, and it's okay.
There's always something. And I think that recognizing that behind the gold and being sought after and wanted, I think that's also one of the dangers of being wanted and being accomplished, is there's so much celebration that I think people don't associate the pain with the victories. And it's something I'm so grateful that you can share that. I see Where the Wild Things is over your shoulder, and I just love that's there. Is that a story you read with your daughter?
Not quite yet. I do quote it occasionally to her. We're still sort of in the Goodnight Moon.
Right.
We also like the Pout Pout Fish. And Richard Scarry's Busy World are popular. She's 5 months old today, so
oh my gosh, yeah, that's be a little too early for Where the Wild Things are.
But it's on the docket, that's for sure.
Right,
we'll get there as soon as possible.
That's awesome. The now the business that you do, and the reason that we originally started this conversation, I know it took a little while to get there, but you have such a fascinating journey, and both of you, I'm so grateful to be able to have this time. So thanks for being so generous. So onlinecareerfair.org is where people can go. They can check out Online Career Fair. And I know that Pete, you were explaining what you did and why you're doing this. And if you could just let people know what they can find here and how this can serve them, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, sure. So with Online Career Fair, we created that in response to the pandemic and the effect that it was having on college students, I guess particularly, the sophomores and juniors whose internships got canceled or made virtual, or, whatever it was, their job offer got rescinded. What we wanted to do was create a place where they could come and identify industry professionals who want to talk to them. And actually have one-on-one conversations about, what's it like? Oh, I see. Okay, you're, vice president at Amazon, and you're willing to spend 20 minutes with me to help me get clarity on what it is that I want to do. And for a lot of college students, they don't necessarily have the family networks that they can reach into to have those kinds of conversations. And what we did was we reached out to, our industry contacts and friends when campuses were being shut down and all the bad things started happening, in late March. And people came out of the woodwork and said, I would be more than happy to talk to college students right now to help them navigate the process of getting into the workforce.
Can you give us a few examples of just some of the companies or partners?
Yeah. So Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Google, IDEO, PepsiCo, KPMG. Meghan, you want to keep going?
BlackRock, DraftKings, like you name it in terms of size of company and industry. We have biotech companies, we have real estate. There's, it kind of runs the full gamut. We've really tried to students have so many different interests, and we didn't want to just cater to one type of student. Right.
So I would assume that I feel like I'm doing an infomercial. I would assume there has to be some kind of cost. How do students get access to all this great information and people?
So because of the pandemic, we just made it free.
Right. It's free. Just to be clear, this is a free resource that students can tap into.
It's a free resource for students. Yeah. And again, the ones that get the most value out of it are probably basically the rising juniors and seniors who are, a year or so away from actually entering the workforce, but are craving the clarity, to understand what's it like to be in the role that you're in the industry that you're in, and find the things that really not only appeal to them, but seem like they would be good fits for however you feel like your talent and skills are today.
Right.
What would be exciting? Because that's like, I think for that first job out of college, like the best thing that you can do is find something that you're enthusiastic about doing on balance, and being in
right.
an organization where you feel like you belong.
Absolutely. So a student can sign up, they can list their interests, and then do they actually pick a company that they want to reach out to, or is it a general area, then you match them with a mentor or coach?
So it's all student driven. So the students actually get to choose who they talk to. Our system does use some algorithmic tools to help make recommendations, but students can choose company, industry, role, other life characteristics like first generation college, or things like that. Yeah. That are result in sort of really meaningful conversations, because when you're talking to somebody who understands where you come from, it really helps put in context how you get from where you are to where you want to be.
Yeah, the first gen piece, I think for anyone who is trying to answer the question, what do I want, is so key. But to be able to talk to someone who's living the life they want, I think that's the beauty that you've created a safe space for students to dream and to be able to connect with those who are living that dream. Kind people, right? Nice people.
They're volunteers.
Yeah. These people, so there's no judgment. And I know that a lot of people are worried about being judged. When it comes to reaching out to these individuals you're calling them coaches. When it comes to reaching out to the coaches, should students expect that if they talk to their coach long enough that they could get a job? Will someone introduce them perhaps, or could that person potentially become an employer?
Potentially, yes. And, I think it's an opportunity to make a good impression. And, what we really aimed to do was first help get these students some comfort, which is give them an opportunity to replace what it was they may have lost because of the pandemic. But, what starts out as just an informational conversation where you find mutual enthusiasm, or if the professional is saying, wow, this student is really enthusiastic. And not only that, they look like they would be really good at this, then what do you think happens next, right? The professionals say, here's a LinkedIn profile, or, here's a video of our conversation, sent over to the HR team saying, put this person on your list because they're we want them on our team.
So you'll record the conversation, that conversation?
They have the option to. It's between the participants, but yeah, they can.
Right. Well, that sounds great. I don't see any reason why somebody wouldn't. Why would someone not do this?
They don't know about it yet.
Yeah.
I mean, any student that comes in and uses it is using it.
Right.
Once they discover it and discover the value, they're like, oh, I get it. And they're meeting with more people, and there's that repeat usage.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. I'm excited to share. it. And then I'm going to wrap this up in just a moment. You've been so generous. But then the question is, why do you do this? Why are you so passionate about this? And I'd love to hear from both of you why you're choosing to do this.
Let me get on my soapbox. No, if just speaking, Pete and I, and hopefully it's kind of shined through maybe a little bit, being an athlete, but also just, landing and kind of on the journey of where we come today is all been at the help of other people. We've all had coaches, we've all had teammates, we've all had teachers, we've had, just a network of people who've helped us along the way. And that is so critical to people's success, is the network that they are often born into, or they graduate into, or, they live in, whatever it is. And imagine a world where everyone has a network that can provide them a pathway to success. And I think that because we've lived it in our athletic lives and professional lives, we understand its value and think that, hey, this can be something that can be afforded to anyone and everyone, no matter, where you live, where you come from, where you were born. And that's what we're trying to do with our technology and our approach and just, our mission, the work we're putting into it every single day.
Are you looking for volunteers for other mentors and coaches? So if somebody sees this and says, I'd love to help, can they also reach out?
Yeah. I mean, there's as open as it is for students sign up, there's a volunteer professional sign up link as well. So, coaches, professionals that are interested in giving back and lending their expertise and just a 20-minute conversation a week, every other week. There's true value in that.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Yeah. It's one thing to really create change and connect with people who want to get where you want to go and support them. Pete, tell me again, I remember before, I want to make sure I pronounce your last name correctly and, forgive me.
No worries. It's Cipollone. It's Italian for big onion.
Is that true?
Yes, that's a fact.
So, and it's a good thing I didn't check. It's a good thing I didn't guess because it would not have been good. It would have been very ugly. It would have gone well, but
it's all good.
Yeah. But tell me, so Pete, and this is I promise the very last question. Why is this thing you're doing? Because I know Meghan had just answered that.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting and sort of makes Meghan and I good business partners is like we see it in a very similar way. That for all of the things in our own lives where like great things have happened, it's been because people saw potential in us, and these were people that we didn't even know. In most cases, I mean, most notably like sports coaches and teachers and people like that. And they helped us because like it was in their nature to do it. Yeah. And what we really want to do is create those kinds of relationships and connections, at as large a scale as we can.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful thing. And I can't think of anything, especially in a time where we just want to create love and light and joy and help people to find paths to get them to somewhere great, to create a very accessible, easy way, a safe way for those who have dreams and aspire to live a certain life to be able to connect with those people. So thank you for offering that gift. And I'm excited to let other people know about onlinecareerfair.org. I'll include the links. We'll include the links to some of your athletic accomplishments as well. And then Pete, if someone has a question about really anything we've talked about, are you somebody who is accessible? Do you respond to people asking questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's as much as I possibly can. In the rowing context, it doesn't happen as often as it used to. But I did about a month ago. I was asked if I would speak to a sixth grade class in the Bronx via Zoom, and it was like so much fun. But anyway, the short answer is yes, by all means.
Yeah, because clearly you've known people, you're still involved with the community, and I know that all it takes is reaching out. And then Meghan, did you say you're training still for the next Olympics?
Yeah, I as of now, it was Tokyo 2021, but I was on track to compete in the Olympic trials and that were to be held in April, and then the Olympic Games that were to be held at the end of July. But obviously that's been postponed until next summer as of now.
How does that mess with your mind? How do you process that?
I mean, knowing that was going to be my last games and that I was looking forward to retirement, it's tough. I think there's a lot of uncertainty and unknown as well going forward, and living in a space where, especially athletes, we have a plan, we have goals, we have a very strict schedule. Yeah. When you're sort of, and then it's been thrown into flux, but also a lot of uncertainty around that. It's tough. And so I think you just have to focus back to what you can do day to day. Reassess every once in a while the big picture, obviously, but not getting too, you can't get too caught up in what you can't control.
Are you going to train and then compete and are you still planning on doing this next year?
As of now, I mean, I'm still training. So like this morning, kicked my butt in a really hard workout. And there's really no end to training for rowing. Pete can attest to that. It's a year-round thing. There's very few off periods.
Right. So you were planning on it. It's such a bummer because you were planning on it, and then all of a sudden your whole entire plan and how you spend your time has been turned upside down. So it's a big mess. Yeah, that's I think the short answer is it became a big mess, and you got to figure out how to work through that. But that's exciting. Well, I will certainly follow you closely, and I'm excited. And it sounds like you two are people who we'll get to know, and I'm grateful to be in your corner as well if there's anything I can do. So to thank everybody, I just want to recap. I've been speaking with Meghan O'Leary, and we've been talking to Pete Cipollone. I think, right? That's what I mean. Right. Just flows.
Nailed it.
Right. Both unbelievable inspirations in so many different capacities, from their athletic accomplishments to what they've done in terms of really reflecting the spirit, love of life and themselves, to helping connect other students to mentors and professionals through online careerfair.org. So I want to thank you both so much for being here. I'm so grateful. If you could just stick for 1 second, I'm going to stop this live, but I want to thank you, and I'm just grateful to have you here.
Thanks, Harlan.
Thank you.
Great.